Hi, this is Dr. Ethel, and welcome to another lecture. Today we are looking at gathering performance information and performance management. And we would be looking at the appraisal form. We'll be looking at the components of an appraisal form and some of the major characteristics of a good appraisal form, for instance, and also how to avoid errors in performance, amongst other things. So the appraisal process has to do with the evaluation of an employee's current and past performance relative to performance standards. Okay, we have established the fact that nobody or no employee works in a vacuum. We have talked about the components of a performance management system, and we have said that prerequisites, setting the prerequisites is the key, one of the basic things. In fact, this is called prerequisite because it has to happen before any other thing can happen. And so before you can appraise anyone, you must have communicated what the standard is, and the standard comes from the strategic goal of the organization, the mission and vision of the organization. And so that must have been communicated and well understood by the employees before you can even begin to talk about appraising. And so the standard should be set at the beginning, and assessing the actual performance is what happens during appraisal versus those standards. Okay, so you're providing feedback to the employee. Why appraise performance? Why is it necessary for us to do that? Now, appraisals provide information for promotion and salary decisions. You are going to be making major decisions with the evaluation or the performance appraisal that you do. And so if you don't organize one, or you don't carry out this important exercise, it becomes difficult for you to make very authentic or very fair judgments as to who to promote and who not to promote, and who to give what kind of salary to, and things like that. And so it's not something you do for fun, it's because it is key to making some of these very major decisions. Number two, it provides opportunity to review an employee's work-related behavior with the goal of correcting deficiencies. This is very, very key. I've always said that in evaluating performance, if the motive is to punish people just for the sake of it, then it's not worth it. What is important is that it is used as a tool to help employees develop, to grow, to get better. And that in another sense, or in the long run, will help the organization itself to develop and grow. Because remember that whatever each employee is doing is to promoting the agenda of the organization. And so what you want to do is appraise them to find out if they are on track, okay, as to what they have been set to do. If they are not, so that we find ways to correct those deficiencies. It's part of the career planning process, okay, so that if somebody would grow in that career path, and there is no review that says that, okay, you are supposed to be going this way, but we find you going the other direction, so we want to bring you back. So as a lecturer, for instance, I'm supposed to be growing from, if I entered as an assistant lecturer, after a certain period and certain achievements, I should be able to move to the next stage, which is being a lecturer. Okay, from there, I can go to be a senior lecturer. and then become an associate professor and become a professor. All right. So if there is no appraisal to for me to know whether I can move to the next stage, that means that I stay wherever I started from, and that means I'm never going to grow in that career. Now, also appraisals help manage and improve your firm's performance, right? Like I said before, it is so that you are appraising individuals or individual employees, but the motive is to help, get them to be on track in terms of the firm's performance, because it is the performance of the individual that determines the performance um, of the organization. Now, the appraisal form is the tool that is used to carry out this very important exercise. And there are usually 9 major components, even though they can vary depending on the organization. So we have the basic employee information. So under the basic employee information, usually have basic information like the job title, division, department, and maybe group information, other group information. You can also have the pay grade or salary classification. In addition, forms also sometimes include the dates of the evaluation period, the number of months and years the rater has supervised or worked with the employee, things like that. And all these things vary, depends on the organization, what kind of information they think is relevant to them. And there's also accountabilities, objectives, and standards. Okay, and here, if it depends on if the organization adopts a results approach or a behavior approach. So if it is a results approach, this section will include the name and description of each accountability objectives agreed upon by the manager and employee. Okay, so the standard that was agreed upon earlier is what would be there, and the extent to which the objectives have been achieved. Okay, so the standard, and then there's a portion to show the extent to which it has been achieved. It could be in numerical grading or written out. There's also the competencies and indicators. So under the competencies and indicators, also depending on which method of measurement has been chosen, they would put in the competencies under that. If it is results, the competencies under those results will be clearly stated, and if they are its behavior, they are looking at the same will happen, and that is what would be used to that would be assessed. Then major achievements and contributions. Also, we have developmental achievements. Okay, developmental needs and plans, and then stakeholder inputs. And the major achievements and contributions, some forms will include a section in which the rater is asked to provide the major accomplishments that the individual that you are rating has achieved during the period. So this could refer to results, behaviors, or both of that. There's also the developmental achievements. This has to do with, in terms of your personal development, what have you achieved? Have you gone for some workshops? Okay, have you been able to acquire new skill, things like that. And then there's the developmental needs and plans. This section would look at the future-oriented um, activities that you want to carry in terms of your development. And this one would usually be based on what you have found yourself lacking, maybe from previous reviews already, or from looking at the period being reviewed, you find that you've been struggling with certain areas and you're saying that those are areas that you need development on. And so you would state the plans that you have. Do you want to attend more workshops? Do you want to be trained on a certain skill? Things like this. And there's also the stakeholder input. And here you are looking at the inputs from maybe the people who receive your service in terms of maybe students. In my case, students will send in their review. Or if you are a banker, you have the customers also fill out that portion for you. Yeah, so this is it for appraisal forms. There's also employee comments. So here you're looking at the comments provided by the employee being rated. So the one being rated will provide these in addition to allowing formal employee input, which improves the perceived fairness of the system. So this makes it all fair. There's also signatures, okay? Forms also have signatures to show that this has been consent from all those that are consent is needed for. Now there's features of the appraisal forms. Features of the appraisal form. If you look at your textbook, you'll be able to see some examples of the appraisal form that you can look at. Also in your own organizations, I'm sure that you've filled out these forms and you can probably even compare notes to see these. Now, performance appraisal forms should have certain features, and some of them are desirable, others are not. Here we're looking at what features would make it a good form. Okay, one is simplicity, and the form must be easy to understand, easy to administer. It should be quick to complete, clear, and very concise. If forms are too long or they are complicated, it makes it difficult for employees to even want to fill them out. Okay. Then relevance. Good forms should include information related directly to the task and responsibilities of the job. Otherwise, they will be regarded as an administrative responsibility of a job. So it should really, it shouldn't be just something we do for the sake of keeping records, but it is, you are making sure that you are touching areas that will impact on performance moving forward. So it should be more practical, shouldn't be appraising or having things in the form that do not really match with the core mandate of the person that you are appraising. You have descriptiveness. Good forms should require that the raters provide evidence of performance regardless of the performance level. So the form should be sufficiently descriptive, and that an outside party or anybody else outside of the organization even or of that department can look at it and get a clear understanding of the performance information that you are trying to convey. Then there is adaptability, and a good form should allow managers in different functions and departments to adapt them to their particular needs and situations. So this feature would encourage widespread use of the form. So if it's, you find some people, I mean, or some organizations introducing a form and it's not, it's not being in use for long. It just fades away, okay, because it wasn't adaptable. They are not able to adjust it when there's the need. Okay, there's also comprehensiveness, and this includes all major areas of performance for particular position for the entire period. So it should be comprehensive enough. It shouldn't be leaving out certain parts of what needs to be appraised. Then there's communication. Communication. This means the meaning of each of the components of the form must be adequately communicated to all people who are participating in the evaluation process. So this will enhance acceptance by the employees. And also time orientation. A good form would help clarify expectations about performance. They address not only the past, but also the future. So it shouldn't only be for today. We know that appraisals look at the now and the future. So that is how it should be captured in terms of time. Now, when you have been able to appraise, or when you are appraising, one of the important things is to determine the overall rating. And because you need to use this rating where some people will rate higher than the other, and so it's not an easy or something that you should do loosely. Careful care has to be taken on how you are rating so that you are seen to be fair as much as possible. And so there are two major methods that are used. One is the judgmental strategy and another is the mechanical. In terms of the judgmental strategy, the aim is to arrive at a defensible summary, right? So you want to consider every aspect of the performance and then give a summary of determining how much a person should rate. Okay, so for instance, if it is you're looking at someone's and so rated over 100, for instance, you can decide that I'm rating you 70, looking at all that I've looked at. So you are trying to arrive at this, but also at the back of your mind, you have a way of defending that. Okay, and you want to be able to, you're giving that mark with the intention or with the readiness to defend it if you're called upon, why you think so. So, but then the mechanical strategy would look at the scores. So that is where I think that's the most common, where we know that for each of the areas that you are evaluating, there are certain ratings attached depending on how important one area is to the other. So some is over 10, some is over 8, some is over 6. Okay, so you cannot rate every part 8 or 9 when, for instance, the overall is 6. Okay, so when you have rated, 8 over 10, you have rated some portions, 2 over 5, you have rated. So with all that, you now add up and you come up. That is a more mechanical way. And it looks more like a method or a strategy that can be easily defended anyway. Well, so now we have the open-ended sections. The challenges with the open-ended is the fact that there is difficulty to systematically categorize and analyze, okay, quality, length, and content. So the open-ended is where you write your comment. There is no limit as to how much you should write. Okay, you can decide to write a whole page or number of pages just on something. So that can be challenging. or because somebody can just keep writing and writing. Someone too can write very scantily. So, but it also has its good point where it gives you more detail. Um, and there was also tools to overcome the challenge here: computer-aided text analysis, software establish goals of information provided. So it would give you, you have a software that gives you very specific goals as to what you should write and maybe guide how much you should write. Training in systematic and standardized rating skills. So it's also important that in all of this, there is some training going on to equip evaluators with the ways they can do this better. So number of meetings, how many times should the employee and the manager meet to discuss or to handle appraisal issues? So this varies, okay? There is what is ideal and there is what is actually happening or what um, organizations are able to do or are committed to doing. Okay, so the most common one is the annual. And this is where annually there is a meeting and your immediate supervisor would fill a form, you fill the form, and then you assess, the person is assessed. And the truth is that this does not provide a sufficient opportunity for the supervisor and employee to discuss. Just meeting once, honestly, would not help. You would need more than one meeting, okay, to be able to handle these things. Some do a semi-annual or a mid-year before there's the annual one, or some will do monthly, or some will do quarterly. As for the annual, it's like constant, it must happen. But the additions of monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or mid-year are also options that should be explored. The more the meetings, the better. Because like we said in another class, you are able to track better, okay, and you put the employee on his toes. Even though too much of it can also put a lot of pressure, but reasonably give reasonable timing, but once is not the best. So if you're in your organization and it is only once and you have a way that you can appeal for an increase, I think that would be a great idea. Now, there are 6 types of formal meetings that you can have. Okay, it doesn't mean that this happens everywhere, but these are the ideal things that can go on, or meetings that can help really improve appraisal. Number 1 is the system inauguration. So it's like introducing the appraisal system to the employees. It can be one-on-one, or it can be an organization too. The HR department can meet the organization and introduce to them the system of appraisal that they want to use. Okay, if it's a manual or if it's an online one, it will be proper to have a good meeting that informs the people that this is what is going to be used, this is the tool, this is what you need, these are the requirements, and this is how you fill this out. If there are questions, people will ask. Okay, so if it's also between you and your supervisor directly, that can also help. But a meeting to inaugurate whatever system of appraisal you are using is perfect. The next one is a self-appraisal, where you are the employee appraises himself or herself. Yes, so the employee would appraise him or herself. At this point, the supervisor does not really give his feedback. This is where you are giving an opportunity for the employee to think through what or how he or she sees himself or herself in terms of his performance. And it would help if you give them the same form that the supervisor would eventually fill also, so that eventually when the supervisor also fills his part, then there can be a good discussion. There's also the classical performance review meeting. And this is called classical because it is like the typical meeting that happens where the supervisor fills his form and the employee does so, and that kind of feedback is given as to whether you've done well or not. If it's on the ERP, that's the point where the supervisor, the employee's form is pushed to the supervisor, where he also feels as part of it. And you can clearly see the deficiencies of the employee in there. And there can be a discussion as to why you have graded or you have evaluated or given a certain weighting and all of that. Then the fourth one, merit salary review. So if based on the appraisal that has been given, it would affect the salary or the promotion, any major effects, it's important to be discussed here so that no one is taken by surprise. Then we have the developmental plan meeting. So this is where, based on the appraisal or the evaluation that has been done, you're looking at which areas need to be, do we need planning in terms of developing. So you were not performing in a certain area, you want to put in what can be, what plans in terms of development should you put in there. So this meeting can also be had with the supervisor and employer or employer and employee to set those meetings. Also the objective setting. This is where you are starting the process all over. Okay, you are setting objectives for the next year. And this time the review that you have received will guide you to do that. Now we have steps in the appraising performance. What are the steps in appraising performance? So when you make sure all agree on the duties, it's like also the standards that you are setting. And then compare performance to the standard. So you set the standard, you compare, you provide feedback, and then you discuss the progress. And then who does the appraising? Obviously your boss does that. We also have peers who can appraise you. And then we have rating committee, and also we have subordinates, and then yourself. And also we have customers in some. So these will depend on the way the organization decides to go. Now, it is important that your supervisor or your boss provides information for your appraisal, because they are the ones usually making the very critical decisions about, your goals. They are the ones that are of superseding things like the promotion. Unless they get their nod, you probably are not progressing. So supervisors are able to differentiate among various performance dimensions. Okay. And so regardless of the level of experience of the employee being rated, supervisors are often the most important source of performance information, because they are knowledgeable about the strategic issues, because they go for the very important meetings on top. You are not in those meetings. So he's the one supposed to communicate the strategic goals of the organization. So it's important that he gives information in that regard. Yeah, so even though the information needed, information is needed from your supervisor, and it is key and very crucial. It is also important to consider other areas of information. It should just not be solely the supervisor providing information or appraising you, because sometimes we have supervisors who can be biased, or who might be appraising you based on a subjective way of evaluating. Okay, they are looking at it from their point of view and their point of view only. Okay, they are not being objective enough. They are not looking at the broader picture. Okay, and also probably because maybe they do not like you for some personal reasons, and that does not help the organization. So you want to use other means of providing information or appraising. And one of that is the peer, using information or appraisal from your peers. That promotes also teamwork, because we have established the fact that these days teamwork is very crucial. And so you don't want to limit yourself to just supervisor employee. Now, in certain areas, you would realize that the peers, or when people work in teams, their team members are able to see more of them than the supervisor. Okay, so the supervisor might not be directly working with them, and does not see them day to day, and so will not be able to give 100% feedback on their performance. So in this case, you can fall on peers or team members to look for other, to supplement that of the supervisor also. You can also get information from subordinates. Subordinates are a good source of information or appraisal, because they are able to give an evaluation of their supervisor in terms of leadership competencies, or delegation. Does the person delegate, or does the person communicate very well? Okay, so they may ask questions about the manager's ability to remove barriers that employees face. Okay, when you have challenges, is he able to help you? Is he able to shield employees from politics, because he's the one at the political front and should be able to help? Is he able to do that? Is he able to raise employees' competence? Okay, has he helped you improve since you started working with him? Okay, so with this type of system, subordinates may hesitate to provide upward feedback if put on the spot. So if managers take the time to involve employees in the process by soliciting their input, employees are more likely to give honest feedback. So find a strategic way of getting feedback from these subordinates, because it might be a bit difficult, because you might be hesitant or thinking of putting your boss in trouble and things. So there should be ways. So think of ways in which would be the best ways that you can give, or you can get feedback of bosses from their subordinates. So there's also the rating committee, where they can set up a committee that actually, so it's not just one-on-one, but it's a team that would give this rating. Then customers are the receiving point. Okay, I have said that in terms of the university as a lecturer, our customers are you, the students. So that's why you always take your feedback or your appraisal of our teaching and maybe other things. And then yourself. We've talked extensively about feedback of the self. So employees should be involved in selecting which sources to evaluate or which performance dimensions to use. When employees are actively involved, there is higher acceptance of the results because they feel part of the decision. It's not someone who imposed on them how we should do this. Perception that the system is fair, okay, is created so that we should involve them in coming out with these models. Direct knowledge of employee performance can be gotten from the supervisor, like we have said, peer subordinates, and now the supervisor, to be able to do an effective evaluation or appraisal, must be familiar with basic appraisal techniques. So I think it's also good that the HR will take these supervisors through some sort of training to let them be aware. Do not assume that they know how to do this. They should be candid but fair when delivering bad news. And this should also go into the training of supervisors to let them know how to communicate these messages. Because some people will just say it anyhow and cripple this person forever. If you watch the Grey's Anatomy, you would see how these doctors, young doctors come and they are being trained and how they're given feedback. Sometimes they, I mean, they kill somebody, I should put it, for want of a better word. And, you know, their mentors or their teachers are able to lift them from that point where they almost are quitting and to put them back on their feet. Even so, they are careful to, yes, correct them or let them know the mistakes, but put it in a way that the person would be able to overcome. HR will often outline guidelines, but leave implementation to supervisors. Okay, so it's very crucial that as an HR, you are providing the guidelines. Never leave it to get. If not, there will be a miss, or should I call it, there will be ununiformed way of doing this. So some will be using a different outline, others will. So there should be a uniformed idea of how we are doing this. It's an example of an evaluation form that you can look out is here. The advantages of a supervisor giving you feedback is the fact that the supervisor can evaluate your performance versus strategic goals. I think we've talked about these. The disadvantage is that the supervisor may not be able to directly observe all the time, and so evaluation may be biased. And also where peers come in, assessing the teamwork, okay. Disadvantages, possible friendship bias. So because we are friends, I can just rate you higher. Maybe less discriminating, okay, and context effects. Subordinates are great when used for, it's very good when you use for developmental purposes, good position to assess some competencies. The disadvantages is that it can inflate, it can be inflated when used for administrative purposes and may fear retaliation. So it might not really serve a good purpose if it does not, that feedback is used, or it's just done for the sake of doing it. Confidentiality is very crucial. If not, probably you shouldn't do it. So to be able to have an effective appraisal, it's important that the expectations are made very clear. We have established the points that job description is what will give every employee an idea or a specific what communication of what is expected of them. So we shouldn't leave out anything, any aspect of the job. Whatever they're expected to do should be comprehensively communicated. Quantify expectations with explicit goals for each expectation. Okay, so you're expecting them to get here and let them know what the goals are specifically. Employees should know basis of appraisal ahead of time. Okay, so you're going to appraise me based on what? So at the end of the day, what should I provide? What do you want to see? Because sometimes there are certain documentations the person needs to gather. If they don't know ahead of time, okay, then they get there, it's time, and already they have not been, they've not prepared themselves for that. They've not put together these documentations, letters that they need to gather. Okay, so sometimes you have people communicating to the people they like. I mean, HR people, when you are close to the person, they will let you know. And when others are not, then they suffer. That shouldn't be the case. Criteria for a good appraisal system, 4 key things to note. Validity, okay, should be a very valid process that you employ. So it should be devoid of, it should be logical. Validity means that you're being logical, you're making sense. It's something that adds up, right? Reliability. So you should have a system that is reliable, something that has a good foundation and well structured and that you can defend. Should be acceptable or acceptability. And we're saying that if you are able to get the employees involved in from the very beginning, then you will get acceptability. Simplicity or specificity is very important, to be specific in areas. There should be nothing left vague and very ambiguous. Okay, should be specific about whatever is needed. Now, relationship between relevance, efficiency, and contamination. So it is important, the deficiency has to do with areas that you are appraising or aspects of the system that is perfect, and you are measuring it. So in terms of reliability, they're looking at freedom from biases, okay, because there can be legal issues in terms of fairness if you are not looking at things like race differences, age differences, sex, and things like that. It's important that you pay attention to these so that you avoid some of these legal battles that can occur. So another thing that you should attempt avoiding to establish reliability is freedom from rating errors. There are errors that can happen in terms of rating, and some of them are leniency errors or recency. And leniency occurs when a rater assigns high ratings to all employees. Okay, the person is just lenient. And the other way, recency is the opposite. They assign low to everyone. Then there's what? Strictness. It occurs when a manager gives low ratings to all employees. And then we have what? Central tendency. That is, it reflects that a manager rates all employees in the middle of the scale. So it's like he's made up his mind, everybody has to be within this middle range, the median sort of. And so no matter how you perform, you are all in the middle some way, somehow. And there is also the halo error, which occurs when one positive performance aspect causes the rater to rate all the aspects of the performance positively. So just by maybe a first impression that is used, and it's like all the other errors are overlooked. That doesn't help the system, because then certain things that are not the best will still keep going on. And why do rating errors occur? Okay, we know that it is unintentional errors. We have the cognitive information process. Okay. And yeah, so some errors will occur because of unintentional, because they are unintentional, all right? And so you might genuinely forget, you might genuinely miss some information, but others too are very intentionally being biased because you are a friend to the person, or you hate the person, or you just don't like this person. You just feel that, I mean, some people just enjoy sabotaging others. So these can all be avoided if we take measures to do so very intentionally. So how information processing can cause rating errors. So you have, the person has never been absent, so you write well, the person always finishes his job and gets along with everyone. Because of that, you are going to use that to rate all these other aspects. So employees' actual behavior observed by supervisor is never absent. Supervisor's later appraisal of employee applies prototype. So this is what you see. And I mean, the first part, never absent. And all you have decided that all the others are also apply. But that shouldn't be the case. If we gave a very critical look at the performance and we maybe use all the other aspects, because sometimes the truth is that you just have not had the opportunity to observe certain or these other parts, and maybe you can use the subordinates or the peers and those things to catch up or to fill in. So how do you avoid appraisal problems? Learn and understand the problem. Use the right appraisal to train supervisors. Okay, so you also reduce the outside factors, the time constraint, the union pressure, because when you do not start early, you are tempted to be rushing when there's time and you just do things hurriedly. You keep a diary of critical incidents. So if you are very forgetful, obviously you're a human being. And if you're keeping information to that you would need about maybe a number, because you must be supervising a number of people. If you don't keep records, write them down. And that will mean that you yourself should sit down to look at what what you're supposed to be appraising people on, and have some sort of a diary on each one that you can fall on when it's time for you to appraise them. Defensible appraisals, conduct a job analysis to determine successful performance, and then use these criteria in rating instruments. Use exact performance metrics. Tell employees and evaluators these metrics. Graphic rating scale should be concrete. Use subjective ratings sparingly. Okay, I mean, things like subjective has to do with not having the obvious evidence of what you say the person can do. Allow appraisers daily contacts. Okay, so if someone is supposed to appraise, let the person who is in daily contact with the person do the appraisal, because then they will see the performance more clearly. Rate on each of job's dimensions. Make sure that you are covering all the dimensions. Use multiple appraisers. No absolute authority. So there should be no absolute authority on one appraiser. Include employee appeal process. Okay, it should. That is the way people can have a way that people can appeal. That way they will find it fair. Document everything. Very important, so that you can avoid legal issues, or when they come up, you would have enough evidence to deal with. Provide consistent help to poor performance. Very, very key. I am passionate about using appraisal as a tool to help than to sabotage. The 360 appraisals assessment, it evolved from upward feedback appraisals. One study, 29% use it, with 11% planning to add multi-source assessment. Yeah, so it means that it is not very common yet, but it is something that has potential to help the appraisal system. It's because it is a great deal of work, obviously. I mean, having just one person do an appraisal is much simpler, makes life easy for everyone, but doesn't give great results. So we may want to broaden it up to if we want an effective system. So we have three appraisal types or objectives. Appraisal, the performance is satisfactory. We have make development plans. So if the performance is satisfactory, with the recommendation is that the person should make development plans to get to the next stage. If it is satisfactory, not promotable, okay. So you maintain performance. So sometimes people, you have not gotten to the stage, maybe you need 4 years to be in the current position you are before you can go to the next. And so your appraisal at this time is satisfactory, but you are not promotable yet because you have other requirements to meet. That way you can maintain your performance because it is good enough. Unsatisfactory, correctable, right? So if it is unsatisfactory, take corrective action. No, so this is where you need specific feedback to be able to take the corrective actions. Do appraisals really help? Studies show that traditional appraisals may be counterproductive. One study showed that 32% rated appraisals ineffective, 4% rated them effective. Performance management and TQM-based appraisals may offer better results. Okay, so it's important that, I mean, we all know that appraisal sounds boring everywhere. And whenever you hear them, you wonder if they are even used for anything. I think that's why you are being trained, so that you can become better users of appraisal, more effective way of dealing with them. And some of all the things we've talked about are things that can help with that. Thank you very much. So till we meet, or till my next lesson, thank you and goodbye.